today. It was the first time all year that it really felt like we had a full slate of basketball. It started at 11 a.m. this morning. We had a matchup between Penn State and Virginia Tech a full 12 hours ago, and we are here ending this night with you guys watching Illinois and UCLA in what has been a pretty interesting and enthralling game. My name is Rob Dauster. I have with me tonight Robbie Hummel, who has decided to grace us with his presence on After Dark, and former Butler head coach LaVall Jordan. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to tonight. The first thing that we are going to do, though, is we are going to have our toast tonight. This is a tradition that we're bringing over from the Field of 12, where we toast or we cheers or we celebrate a player or a coach or a team or someone that had some kind of success tonight that we want to celebrate and we want to highlight. LaVall, I'm going to go to you first on this one.
Yeah, Rob, what's up? I'm going to go toast tonight to my guy, one of my guys in the profession, Ron Sanchez, in the University of Charlotte, playing for the Myrtle Beach final. They're 4-0 for the first time in years. 2 big wins down there in Myrtle Beach, and he gets to play for a championship coming up here, I think against UMass. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's on the other side of the bracket. So I got a bottle of water here, but a toast to my man Sanchez. He's one of my guys, and I'm happy for him. So I'm pulling for them to get a championship here.
Hummel, what's going on, man? Who you got?
I'm going to go Armaan Franklin and the Virginia Cavaliers offense. Armaan Franklin, 26 points, 7 of 12 from the field, got to the foul line 10 times. And even bigger picture from that, Virginia, 9 of 14 from 3. They were on fire against Baylor. So I have nothing to drink. So cheers to that.
Cheers to UVA, a school and a program and a community that really needed something good and something positive to root for. I'm going to go with the SWAC. It is the second straight night that I've been on After Dark where I have toasted the SWAC. Tonight, they picked up their 4th win over a Pac-12 team as Southern went into Cal and knocked off the Golden Bears. And we also had Mississippi Valley State pick up their first non-conference win against a Division I opponent since 2018. Fellas, how about that? Cheers to the SWAC, getting it done this season.
The Pac-12 is about to cancel that deal. they thought it was going to be a fun little thing that they do in schools, and they not so much.
Good coaches down there in the SWAC. Trust me.
You love to see it. It's a shame that it's going to end the Pac-12 SWAC Legacy Series because that was a cool event and a cool idea. But I guess
they're doing it next year. They're doing it next year too. They're doing it next year too. Yeah, because the home and home.
How many years are on it?
The home and homes are going back next year.
That's good.
Yeah, I think they play the same teams, but they just flip-flop the venue.
I guess they're probably checking to see how wet the ink is on those contracts at this point, just to make sure. All right, we have a lot to get into tonight. The Gavitt games finished up. We had Villanova coming back and ultimately falling at Michigan State. Indiana went into Xavier and knocked off the Musketeers in Sean Miller's first big game since coming back to Cincinnati. And then we'll get into Illinois and UCLA when this game comes to the end. But Hummel, I want to go to you first on this one. You mentioned Virginia because they beat up on a Baylor team, ranked number 5 in the country, a team that a lot of us thought could be a real legit national title contender to the season. The final score there, 86-79. As you mentioned, they made 9 of 14 threes. It felt like they hit it about 12 in a row in the second half as they turned a 4-point deficit into what I believe hit a 20-point lead at one point. So let's just go big picture on this one first. Virginia, how good is this team and where do they kind of rank compared to some of the best Virginia teams of the past?
I think they're really good. Now, in terms of ranking them compared to the national title team back in 2019 or some of Tony Bennett's other teams that have been really good, I don't know about that, but I do think that they're a team that's going to challenge Carolina. They're going to challenge Duke to be at the top of the ACC. I really like Armaan Franklin. I think he had a good NIT last year and has really come on and played well. Had a great game tonight. I like Jaden Gardner. I know he was 1 of 4, but I saw him not 2 years ago now, I suppose, when he was at East Carolina. He can really score. You have a point guard who knows how to win in Kihei Clark. I like the addition of Ben Vanderplas, who has been in the NCAA tournament at Ohio. I like this team. And defensively, what they did to Baylor tonight, especially considering how much Baylor loves to play pick and roll with their guards and the way they defended that. It's all about talking about the pack line. But tonight, I think the story for Virginia is the hard hedge. I mean, it just killed Baylor. It was so effective defensively. And got to give a lot of credit to those kids for getting out there and being solid in their pick and roll defense.
Mm-hmm. It's part of the reason it works so well, LaVall, is that what Scott Drew likes to do is run ball screen after ball screen after ball. It's kind of the way that he builds his offense out. So, what was it about the way that they were hedging? Just kind of elaborate on that point a little bit. Why did that match up?
They, the way there's just a limited space. The way if you're playing against the UVA team, and obviously you think of like UMBC when they beat them in the tournament. If you got a big that can pick and pop, if you can play through your big. So what Baylor doesn't have is a big you can hit on a short roll and he can make a next decision, right? When you're playing against that hard hedge team, and it's difficult. I mean, I remember Hummel. You'll appreciate this. This is a shout out to Purdue when we had Trey Burke, who's National Player of the Year at Michigan as a sophomore, but his freshman year, when Purdue hard hedged him, like he struggled. And Keontae George had 5 turnovers tonight, and he had 20 points. He's phenomenal. He's a heck of a player. But when those guys jump out at you and they're aggressive, it shocks you, and it's hard to practice it. That's the thing. It's like you can talk about it, you can watch it on film, but you don't feel it the same way until you're actually playing in the game. And they struggled early. They fought and got themselves back in the game, but it's difficult, especially for young guards. And so if you can't hit your big on a short roll and him make another decision for your team, it's hard. Or if he can't pick and pop and shoot, and when the UMBC, the big upset, their bigs popped and hit a bunch of threes.
It's hard to believe, but I was on that team. I played against
Trey
Burke, so I was I was on.
It was hey, we went from icing to hard hedging because it was like, hey, if Trey can't handle a hedge, we might need to do it because he's the best guard in the country. So we probably should do that.
Yeah. But I want to say that we were on fire too. We made a ton of threes in the game at Michigan, at least. You guys beat us at home that year, but yeah.
So with this Virginia team, what we always see with Tony Bennett's best teams and best programs is that player development, right? Over the course of 2, 3, 4 years. How important is it now that Caden Shedrick and Armand Franklin and Jaden Gardner have had a year in the program? Are we seeing that jump, right? Because what we saw tonight from UVA beating up on a Baylor team that was top 5 in the country is a big step up from what they were last season. And it's not, you don't always see those leaps from teams that bring everybody back, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like TCU, kind of like Creighton to a point this year.
The question about Michigan State and Michigan State as well. I mean, they have taken that jump, I would say, too. So, this is the same core that made the NIT last season. And, that's definitely not the standard at the University of Virginia. And there's no question that even though last year was a down year for them, Tony Bennett can really coach. That's not a question ever. So for those guys, I'm sure it was talked about all summer long. I'm sure it drove those guys. And you bring everybody back. You bring in a transfer who you can bring off the bench that understands his role. And I thought it was pretty cool. They were talking about how Vanderplas's dad played for Dick Bennett. That's a pretty cool connection in that regard. But he's a guy that can score, and he's going to do what Tony asked, and he'll be fine with coming off the bench. And they're just a really good team. Last year, their depth wasn't great last year, if I'm not mistaken. They were playing 6, 7 guys. I think tonight they played 10. So certainly Tony feels like he can go to some other guys now, and definitely you have to credit the player development for these guys taking a step, staying together, and playing at a high level early on in the season.
I want to play a little devil's advocate.
This too, here. Rob, is like, and this probably be a theme while I'm on here with you guys like all year. Guards and 3-point shooting. Like Virginia now, the issue last year, they defended like Virginia typically does, and everybody expects them to defend that way. But right now, if Armand Franklin's making 3 threes a game, and we recruited Armand, so this will probably be the night where it's like all the guys that we almost got but didn't get. Armand Franklin, one of those guys. He's from Cathedral High School here in Indianapolis, and we went hard after him and didn't get him. And he wasn't a great shooter coming out of high school. But as you talked about the player development piece, like him making 3 threes a game at this point in the season. Reese Beekman, like we recruited Reese and had involvement with him. He wasn't a great shooter, but he's hitting 1.5 a game now. And Kay Clark is hitting 2 a game. Like that was the thing last year. They struggled to score because they just didn't shoot it from the perimeter.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is to play devil's advocate a little bit. I think in the second half, Baylor kind of figured out how to go up against that defense and kind of figured out what they were doing. To me, what really stood out, Hummel, was your toes, right? And we know you can always just assume that you're going to have a certain floor for what Virginia is defensively, right? But if they're a team, and I'm not expecting them to go like 9 for 14 from 3 or shoot 56% from the floor every single night, but they didn't have a game like this in their ceiling last year.
No.
So honestly, I didn't think that they had a team that could put up 86 points against a program that we know is as good defensively as Baylor is.
I think you could say the same thing about Texas and Chris Beard from a couple nights ago. We always knew they'd defend, but if they're going to score like that, they can be up there with anybody in the country. I just think the standard is that high for the way they defend you, to where if their offense is clicking, and on a night where tonight, and you said this, they're not going to shoot 64% from 3 every game. They're going to have nights where they don't shoot it well. But I do think that they have experienced guys, and I don't see a reason why they won't compete for an ACC title this year.
But with North Carolina, back when the year they won it, Kyle Guy was making 3 a game, and Ty Jerome was making 2 a game. And it's like, hey, they got a couple guys right now making 2 a game, and Vanderplas can hit 1, and they got enough. They're going to be in the game defensively. Like, I was shocked that they were up, because they typically aren't blowing people out. But if you get down by 20 to Virginia or Wisconsin,
like 40.
Yeah, if you get down by like Villanova, Virginia, Wisconsin, I kind of put them in the same category. If you get down by 20 to those guys, it's like being down 40. Like, it's hard to come back because of they're not going to turn the ball over. They're going to make good decisions. They're going to be fundamentally sound. So it makes it difficult. So kudos to Baylor for getting themselves back in the game and cutting it to 1 or 2 possessions.
Are we worried about Baylor at all? Is this something that's concerning to you? Was this just UVA caught fire on the wrong night? This is why I'm a little bit concerned. And I kind of said this heading into the season, but I didn't really know if I believed it myself. They have small guards, right? And when they had Davion Mitchell, and when they had Maceo Teague, and when they had Mark Vital, they had small guards, but those guys were also the elite of the elite defensively, right? And I don't know if you could say the same about some of the pieces on this roster, right? I don't know if LJ Cryer is really a guy that you believe is a great defender. I don't know if Adam Flagler is. They're probably in the right spots most of the time, but they're just not the same level of athlete. So is that something that, am I reading too much into it by just saying, I don't know if they're going to be able to get stops this year?
I think so.
How small are you calling small? Like, in Keontae George, like 6'4", and Flagler.
Yeah, but he's playing the 3 for him when you have those 3 guards out there.
Yeah,
right?
And if you have that, like what they had with the group that won it, we played them. So we played them. This was the COVID year. We went down there. We were 12-0, non-conference. Went down and lost to Baylor by 1 the year before they won it, and they had those 3. They had elite quickness. Now these guys aren't as quick. Like those guys were unbelievable, beat you to spots and turn you, and they were elite with their quickness. These guys, the guards they got now, I mean, I think just looking at it, and I watched, a decent amount of the game, was I think they played the way they typically played. How much can they get out of their bigs? And then, because Flagler came into the game averaging double figures. He scored 15. He had 7 assists. Keontae George didn't have the 6 assists that he was averaging because he struggled with the hedge and the ball screen coverage from Virginia. And then LJ Cryer had 19, but they in a game like that, your bigs, I'm not worried. I mean, their bigs have to be able to give them something. But I'm not concerned about it. Like, Scott will figure it out. He's a good coach. And I think they'll be okay.
Robbie?
Yeah, I'm the same. It's one game. I think Virginia caught fire. I do think that teams are going to see this blitzing ball screen style, and if they have the bigs to do it, we'll try it. And in that case, you might have to go to a smaller lineup and even play 4 guards, right? Or play a guy. I haven't seen Jalen Bridges play a lot. I know he didn't play well tonight. Could they short roll him and have him make plays, or is that not his deal? No,
I don't think he's really that guy.
Yeah.
He's a pick and pop guy more than he is someone that can kind of play that playmaking role at the spot.
He was the guy that had been giving him, 16 points and 6 rebounds a game. Like, he was the guy that, kind of that got taken out of the game because of the hedge. the guards couldn't get him the ball. So he didn't get, he wasn't as productive as he had been early in the season.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys are watching this right now.
Everybody went away from, not everybody, but most, a majority of programs went away from hard hedging. Like we still did it. We dropped we dropped more in the past, but it's just to stay out of rotation, because the 3-point shot has become such an emphasis. Teams switch or ice, or for Virginia and Tony and the way he coaches in their system, and for them to stick with it and still be able to hard hedge like that it's impressive.
How hard is that to do? You mentioned that people have kind of gone away from it, right? Like how hard is it to do that? Is it something is that why it takes so long for guys to kind of figure out what they're doing in that pack line system?
I think so, just because nowadays, the biggest question most coaches are trying to figure out is what to do against the switch. Mm-hmm. Because you don't want your guards dancing with the basketball. You don't want to sit there and stare down, a big on small matchup on the inside, and the other team, you're telegraphing what you're looking at against the switch. The ice has become a thing, and I think coaches have gotten pretty good at attacking the ice when you get, you can't get to the middle of the court. But the hedge is kind of, UConn does it. I mean, Connecticut, like Coach Hurley he's religious with it. He's going to stay with it. And like I said, Coach Bennett is like, he's not changing. Why would he? He won a national championship doing it. But some people that used to do it don't do it as much anymore. It used to be the way we played, like religiously. When I was an assistant at Butler, it was hard hedge everything on the sides, in the middle. But over time, you're trying to eliminate rotations and threes.
Don't you think the rule changes kind of hurt that too, Coach? With some of the cylinder stuff, and I mean, with pressing, trapping, I just think it's so hard now. You can get your guys in foul trouble so easily.
Yeah, like Robbie, you guys used to do it.
We hedged everything, yeah.
And now Paint has those giants in the middle, so they can't get out there
yeah, exactly.
and move, so they drop or ice and keep those guys in the paint.
Yep. No, I think it's a combo of all those things. Sorry, Rob, go ahead.
No, we're watching the end of this Illinois UCLA game, and Illinois is taking a 10-point lead. Terrence Shannon, 29 points, 10 boards. He is 8 for 9 from 3. He's looking like a young Robbie Hummel out there. We're going to get to that when this game ends. I do just want to kind of ask you guys real quick, big picture. We saw Kansas struggle a little bit tonight with Southern Utah. We saw Texas the other night go out and pound Gonzaga, right? Kansas obviously beat Duke in the Champions Classic. Where do you stand on who the best team in that conference is? Do you still think it's Kansas? Is it Texas now? Is there too much overreacting going on to these small sample sizes? Robbie, where do you stand on the best team in the Big 12?
Well, right now, I think it's Texas. I think their depth. I think their guards. I just think that Chris Beard can throw so many different combinations of players out there, and the way they guard you. Not that Kansas isn't, they're going to be really good too. But I think that I don't think Kansas has near the amount of guys that can be thrown out there. They've got to. I think their best five is good, but I do worry about the bench some for the Kansas Jayhawks. But I really think Texas has dudes on top of dudes on that roster.
Yeah, Kansas got 4 points off their bench tonight. LaVall, let me ask you this. I texted you guys about this before. One of the things that people like me that gamble way too much look for are trap games, right? Where you're coming off of a big win, or you have a big matchup coming up in your next game or coming up in the future. And you're going up against a team like a Southern Utah after winning in the Champions Classic, and right before, I think they leave tomorrow for the battle for Atlantis. So how much does that actually impact a locker room? Is that something that you've seen in your experiences where it's kind of hard maybe to get up for a game like that?
Yeah, as much as you hate, I mean, you're fighting it, Rob, right? Like those games and the game right before Christmas break, like we'd always tell our guys, hey, listen, we can't be running, we can't be running for the bus here. Like we gotta play because the other team's excited to play. And so you're fighting human nature, right? And especially now with social media and everybody's talking about the battle for Atlantis or the next game, or they're still patting you on the back about a big win, the other night against Duke. And so as much as you're trying to emphasize staying present, staying in the moment, being where your feet are, it's hard. They're 18 to 22-year-old kids. And so you're just trying to keep them focused on, and you don't want to be one of those teams that thinks they can turn it on and turn it off, right? You're just trying to battle against that as much as possible.
Robbie, did you deal with that at all?
Yeah, the Christmas break thing is so real because everybody's excited to go home and see their family. And I think as a player, you get excited about the games against the best teams on national television. And when you're playing a directional school or whoever, some of the lesser opponents, I will say, especially when you've got some big games sandwiched like Kansas did tonight, that can be tough. That can be tough. But I think that's where you have to lean on your veterans and guys who have been there and understand kind of what the deal is, where when you lose these games, it really hurts you come NCAA tournament time when you're trying to get a high seed and, make the NCAA tournament or whatever situation your team finds itself in. Every game is important. You lose to a team in the 300 at Ken Palm, it's a killer on your resume. But with that being said, at times, even in the Big Ten, like I swear to God, we played at Penn State on every break they had possible. And not that they have great crowds there anyway. They're a football school. You play there on Christmas break. You play there on President's Weekend. That place is empty. And you got to really manufacture your own energy because you're going out there. You're used to playing at Michigan State, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. These places have big-time juice. And sometimes you roll into the Bryce Jordan Center and there'd be 1,000 people there.
That's why they kept picking off people at the end of the Big Ten season. All right, I'm going to stick in the Big Ten for 1 second before we get into this Illinois game because I told you guys I was going to ask you this. Hunter Dickinson, earlier this week, I think it was right before they played Arizona State, Michigan did. He said on a podcast, we're going to beat Arizona State by 20, right? They come out, they lay an egg. Michigan lost. I don't know what the final score was. They were down by 30
piece.
Yeah, they were down by 30 in the second half. LaVall, if that happens and you're the head coach, what are you doing? How do you handle that situation?
Look, I listen. As long as I've been playing or coaching, and Robbie, as a player and Coach Painter, I'm sure you're trying. No bulletin board material. Like we don't need to give another team extra motivation. And so as a coach, you're trying not to say anything that they could use and put up in their locker room to use as motivation. You're definitely not, allowing your players to say, and now it's hard, right? Guys can have their own podcast. They can have their own, they've got NIL stuff and they're doing, but it just typically it's like, we got to stay away from giving them any extra, like they're already motivated to beat Michigan. It's Arizona State, it's Michigan, they're a ranked team, a ranked opponent, they can get a top 25 win. That's enough. And now if you come out and say we're going to beat them by 20, and so as a coach, you're just patrolling your team as best you can to not allow, and when you have a maturity about your group, that they won't do that stuff. So I'm sure I would imagine afterwards, Coach Howard and Hunter probably had a conversation about not, doing anything to ignite another group, for the rest of the season.
It's so funny to me because when I was at Purdue, we were banned from Twitter in season. And think about it. So Coach Paint was afraid that we would offend or get some bulletin board material in 60 characters. And now you've got guys that have their own podcast. And that's great because they can make money off it. I guess, Draymond Green has kind of set the standard for having not just post-game media, but now media at all times. And I think that's kind of flowed over to college. But I can only imagine the conversation that was had because you can't really take it away from him because it will be used against you recruiting, right, Coach? Wouldn't that be, hey, well, Hunter had a podcast and then they take it away from him? I would think that unless he's doing totally egregious things.
Yeah,
like saying that they're going to win by 20 and then they go and get 30.
No, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Well, I mean,
But I'm sure he's just telling them tone it down. Like you have your podcast, have fun, but do not make predictions on how many points you're going to have or how much we're going to win by or any of that stuff.
Yeah, no question. Like we don't need any prediction. Coaches don't like preseason rankings. We don't like predictions. Like none of that. We just want
we got Hunter
focus on practice, get better today, and and go out and be the best version of ourselves tonight. But Michigan's a top 25 team. Frankie Collins transferred from Michigan to Arizona.
Yeah, there's already plenty out there for them.
He's ready to get back at Michigan, just because he left there and he wants to prove that he should have been playing. Like there's enough going on already. We don't need extra.
All right, so Illinois is now up 10 with a minute left. I feel confident enough to say this game is probably over at this point. I bet UCLA minus 3.5. I think that bet's probably dead. And my daddy Brad really stuck it to me on that one. If you guys want that shirt, get to field68.shop. There's a guy wearing the Daddy Brad shirt behind the bench, which is part of the reason why I'm so excited for this win right now. Let's talk about it. Assuming that
what's the shirt Daddy Brad for? Why is it Daddy Brad?
I don't remember why it happened. But Greg Waddell, who was one of the hosts on the Field of 68 and the Field of 12, is a Michigan fan. And at one point he said, I have to say that Brad Underwood is my father. He's my daddy Brad. And Illinois fans took that and ran with it. And now we've sold a whole bunch of shirts to Illinois fans, and there's a guy wearing one behind the bench right now as Illinois is picking up a win, assuming they're going to close this thing out against number 8 UCLA. Terrence Shannon. I want to start with this, okay? Terrence Shannon, 29, 8 for 9 from 3. They keep talking about how this dude woke up every day at 4:20 in the morning to get in the gym and shoot 1,000 threes at 4:45 in the morning. Like, that's kind of unnecessary, right? Like you can get the same amount of work in at waking up at like 6 or 6:30. Do you really need to wake up at 4:20 in the morning? Like, that's a little bit of overkill, right? That's
I guess it depends on what he was doing the rest of the day, right? If he had class from like 9 to 9, then yeah, maybe.
There's no way this dude was in class at Illinois come on, Robbie.
The work at 2 p.m. is the same as the work at 4 a.m.
Exactly. You don't have to get up at 4:20. What are we doing here?
It was like a discipline type thing. Like
here's the thing. I know I went over to watch those guys practice. So they practice at 7 a.m. So he's getting his work in before practice starts. And then they have the rest of the day for class and everything after that. But when I was there at their practice, I went and I talked to Brad afterwards. I watched their team. I really thought Jaden Epps could be somebody that could really help them. As he can score. He had a great day at practice that day. He scored the ball. But and I went around to about 20 practices. It's what coaches, when you're in a transition year and you go around and watch people you think are good and respect and go, just try to learn and steal some things. And Terrence Shannon was the most dynamic athlete I saw at any of the college practices I went to. And I told Brad, I said, he should live at the foul line. Now he's shooting 10 free throws a game on the year, which is insane. Like four free throws a game is a good number. 6 is elite. We had Nick Stauskas at Michigan. He was Big Ten Player of the Year. He shot 6 free throws a game. That's elite. 10 is like out of this world. If he's going to do that and make threes, like tell me what you're going to do to prepare for Terrence Shannon.
Well, and in transition, he is just a nightmare because of those tools that you talked about, Coach. He's a big time player, and he's definitely added the jump shot to his game. Because I don't, not that he couldn't make a shot at Texas Tech from the perimeter, but not like this. I mean, going 8 of 9 from 3 in a game. I thought, who came in and impacted the game in a big way was Sincere Harris. When they went on that little run of pressing and all of a sudden UCLA looked like a 4th grade team breaking the press, he was out there. He was dogging the ball handler, and that changed the game. The second that UCLA got a little bit casual with that, it's like the Illinois pressure just had worn them down so much to the point where it just opened the floodgates. And after that, it was never the same. I'm really impressed with the way that Illinois hung in there because they really struggled into the first half, but their pressure wore UCLA down. And I'm honestly really surprised considering that Tiger Campbell is the head of the snake there breaking that press.
Illinois is going to pull this thing out with turning the ball over 21 times themselves, which is normally if you turn it over 21 times, you're not winning.
Yes.
They turned it over 21 times and they gave up 17 offensive rebounds, and they're going to beat the number 8 team in the country by 9 points. That is
and UCLA shot 41% from 3.
Yeah, that's not something that you see every day, and I think it's a testament to what One, Terrence Shannon's performance, and two, what this team can be. I said all summer long that I thought that of all the teams in the Big Ten, Illinois had the highest ceiling, right? When they are at their best, Robbie, I don't know if there's a team that is better than them when they're at their best. My issue is you never know when they're going to be at their best. Matthew Meyer was famously inconsistent at Baylor, right? Coleman Hawkins, you are on record saying that he's only good against directional schools. He came in averaging, I think, a double-double. He had 5 points, 5 boards. He actually had 7 assists.
He did some really good things while also doing some things that make you just shake your head. He has a lot of ability. I've never doubted that. I just think that sometimes he doesn't put it all together. Matt Meyer tonight, 11 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. You will take that every night and sign up for it because he has been about as inconsistent as you could see him being coming into this season. They're deep. Their pressure can be a killer. It can wear you down. I think Terrence Shannon is going to be one of the best players in the Big Ten this year. Think about how little we've talked about RJ Melendez. I mean, he's like right now their 5th or 6th guy, which is crazy considering I think his ability level. But these young guards, Jaden Epps can really, really score. Sky Clark did some really good things. Yeah, totally. I just their roster, I agree with you. I think Indiana's experience makes me say that they are the best team right now. But if you're talking about ceiling, Illinois has got to be right there at the top of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Well, here's the question that Rob I got for you is like, and when as basketball is played today, I think it comes down to versatility. So like what Illinois has, if you got a big guy, they can throw Dana Danger in there and he can battle. He can go down there and wrestle the bear. If you're mobile and small ball, they can put Coleman Hawkins in and they can play Terrence Shannon at the 4 and they can switch everything. They can put Ty Rodgers in the game. If you got small quick guards, like their freshman guards are going to get better. I just think they have a defensive versatility that a lot of other teams might not have. Like if you can only play one way, that limits your ceiling, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think that was the issue with Illinois when they had Kofi, right? They had no option to go away from him. And part of it was because you're looking at a guy that was one of like the 5 best players in college basketball. He averaged 21 and 10, right? So it's not like he was a bad basketball player. But when you have to have him on the floor, it means that teams in the tournament can do things like what Cameron Crutwood did, right? They pull him away from the basket and make him have to defend in space. And that was not Kofi Coburn's strength, because if it was, he wouldn't have lasted more than a year.
Rob, before we move on, do you know what Dane Danger is on the season from the field?
Yeah, he's what is he shooting, like 79%?
I don't know the percentage. I don't know the percentage, but he is 30 of 35 from the field.
Pretty good.
He's shooting like 85%, maybe higher. It might be higher than that, actually.
Is that including 6 for 6 tonight?
Yes, that's counting the 6 for 6 tonight. 30 of 35.
He can move. Did you know he's
shooting like 85%? No, he was kind of handling it tonight too.
He's a dancing bear.
Yeah, no doubt.
The dancing bear. The other team, like I went and watched Michigan State practice. Like they have the same thing. Like they can play Joey Hauser at the 5. But which kind of changes things up for them. Like it's not always going to be Matty. I went to Purdue. Like they can go small and play Mason Gillis and Caleb First, the 4 and the 5, or they can be huge with Edie. Like I think that presents, and so I don't know. Indiana is like Trace is extremely versatile. Like and they can go a little bit smaller. I don't know if they have it in the same manner as Illinois, but I do think they're a tough matchup.
So here's a question I have for you guys, right? I think after watching that game, that I can feel comfortable saying that Illinois is going to be, at the bare minimum, a good defensive team, right? Seeing what they can do when they throw on that press, seeing the way that they flustered a guy that I think we all agree is one of the best point guards and one of the calmest and most savvy point guards in the country in Tiger Campbell, seeing the way that they can switch. I feel comfortable saying they're going to be a good defensive team that has the chance to be really, really good. They have some guys coming in that weren't necessarily considered great defenders, right? Like I don't think anyone ever looked at Sky Clark and said that guy is going to be a ball hawk defensively, right? Matthew Meyer, part of the reason he's not at Baylor is because defense was optional at times when he was on the floor, right? I don't know if Coleman Hawkins was ever a guy that was really at the level that you thought he should be given his physical tools defensively. So my question, LaVall, when you have a group of guys that maybe weren't great individual defenders, how hard is it to get them to kind of come together and then all of a sudden to become this unit that, I mean, it worked. It worked defensively tonight, right?
Have you ever been to a Brad Underwood practice?
I have not, but I can imagine what it's like.
Robbie's been. I experienced it. I mean, I don't think there's going to be an option in terms of effort.
Defend or don't play.
And so Matt Myers and there's a little bit of culture shock there. It's just different than playing for Scott Drew. But I think like you look at Purdue, right, and they've got over the past few years, like when Robbie was there, they had defensive players and versatility, and you came through with Rayfield Davis. Now that they've had more offensive players recently, I would say in this year, even with Braden Smith, Foster Loyer, like those guys. But Paint's he's gonna challenge him, and so I
love that. By the way, LaVall, I love that you basically just said that when Robbie Hummel was there, all Purdue had was good defensive players, and then
not all.
That was good. All
no, but we were. I mean, you look at the defense.
You had Lou Jack on the board. Like it's hard to get the ball up the court against Lou Jack.
Yeah, totally. we were much better defensively than when we were offensively. And now Paint, I think they practice offense a heck of a lot more than now. Maybe not this year, but last year.
It's hard to score. Like you don't want to be the team that can't score. I live that as like if you can't score points, it makes life difficult. We were talking about Virginia earlier, right? Like so they're gonna, and those guys are gonna get in line, or they probably won't play for Coach Underwood. And they got enough depth where, and that's the real key is if you have enough depth, you can hold everybody accountable to the standard. Right. And when you get stuck is when you don't have depth and you're playing guys, even though they're not performing the way you need them to perform on that end of the court.
Well, on top of that too, Coach, before you go, Rob, I mean, Matt Meyer and Coleman Hawkins have every physical tool to be a good defensive player. And Matt Meyer is really athletic. Coleman Hawkins is really athletic and really long. And I think when the standard of the team, if Terrence Shannon's your best player and he's setting the tone, hawking the ball, and doing that, and when you have your coach Brad Underwood who's demanding you do it or you just don't play, you either move along with what's going on or you sit on the bench.
Mm-hmm. All right, I want to talk about UCLA real quick just because I think that it deserves some mention. Jeff Goodman famously picked them to win the national title about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if he's still going to do that. At this point, he's probably going to be all in on Illinois and try to claim that was his team from the beginning of the season. Tiger Campbell, 9 for 23. Jaime Jaquez, 8 for 22. They had nobody else on the floor get more than, well, I guess David Singleton had 15, but I think he had a couple of threes late. Are you worried about this group at all? I mean, Amari Bailey, 0 for 5, really didn't have an impact. Jalen Clark kind of came back to earth after a hot start to the season. Coach, are you worried about them?
Not necessarily. Again, Mick's got a standard and he's got a level of demand for those guys. They're going to be in games defensively. I think they have a really good point guard and a coach that demands defense. So that, for me, gives you a sense of comfort. And then they've got some matchup, problem. I think Jalen Clark's like his jump, in the first few games from what he was doing, last 2 years of his career has been impressive. He didn't do it tonight. And I think that's a learning lesson for him. So I think all these teams, like UCLA right now, they're learning about themselves and learning about themselves against top-level teams in the country, and which will be beneficial when they get to Pac-12 play. I think Tiger, for him to have to take 20 shots is not their norm.
You don't want that. Like his strength is not being the bucket getter, right? His strength is setting the table for everybody else.
Right. And so I think they get better from this game in terms of their team efficiency on the offensive end of the court. Them being able to break a press, and be commanding against a press. They won't struggle as much as in the future. But it's a lot of learning. Like you lose a game, which is not ideal. You don't want to lose these games, but it's more you're learning about your team. They're learning about their young guys, their freshmen, Amari Bailey and guys like that. And so it's just feedback for the future. I think they'll be fine.
You agree, Robbie?
Yeah. I just have a hard time saying that they're in trouble after losing to a team the caliber of Illinois on a neutral floor. I think they have things to figure out. I think they have youth on the floor with Bona and Bailey. But no, I'm not worried about them. I think they have a really good.
You guys are too level-headed. You guys are too level-headed. I'll fire out the hot takes. All right. UCLA
it's one game. They lost to a good team. Like what?
But they need a third guy that can go kind of create something, right? Because I think Jaime Hawkins is, you don't want him to be your lead scorer. I don't think. I think he's best as kind of like that complimentary.
But he hasn't been on the season, right?
Jalen Clark's leading him in scoring 17 a game.
But do you trust Jalen in a situation like this to be the guy that you give the ball to and go get a shot? Because he took 8 shots tonight and the other 2 guys took more than 20, right? So I think it's one, Amari Bailey. He's a freshman, right? Got to give him some time to kind of get there. And Adam Bona is a guy that needs to be better than the impact that he had tonight. I think he was 5 points, 2 boards, 3 shot attempts, right? So I think that there's certain places where you can see where this team needs to improve. And they have pieces that can get there because they're freshmen, and the freshmen are only going to end up getting better. But I watched them play there, and it feels like they're a little bit limited. And yes, that's overreaction to one game, but that's what I do. That's my specialty here.
Here's what makes it tough is when you play and when teams start switching, right? And so now you end up Tiger taking 20 shots and Jaime taking 20 because you got a big on you, got a matchup, and you kind of get out of your flow of your offense and those guys are old and they want to win and they're trying to take it over. So like I said, I think they'll learn from it and be better to attack some matchups in a different way so that it's not, outside of the flow of what they traditionally do.
Coach, can you elaborate a little bit on why a switching defense takes people out of the offense and what that does?
What happens? You're trying to coach your so the switching defense, and you're gonna have matchups where the players also know it. I mean, they're smart guys and they play basketball for a long time. So if you have a big on small matchup on the inside, what you don't want is guys staring down and telegraphing because you got a big against a guard in the post, and now you get stagnant and everybody stands around and there's no movement, no player movement, and you're just looking at the big, and the other team knows what you're looking for. The other thing is your guard's got a big on him somewhere on the perimeter, and you don't want that guy to dance and dribble and try to, he knows he's got a bigger, slower, maybe, guy on him. And now, but what happens in both scenarios is everything stops and everybody's looking at one player trying to attack a matchup, which isn't the normal flow of what you're doing and what you want. And so it's hard. And when a team can, like Illinois, like I said, they have versatility when they can do it and disrupt you. It's why it's hard to play against Villanova. They switch and disrupt, and now you end up playing one-on-one, which is not ideal.
Yep. Robbie, we have a question in the chat for you from Connor Stewart. He said, Indiana damn near lost to Xavier. How is Illinois not the top Big Ten team, you clown? So that's a perfect transition to get into Indiana. They survived. They were up by 8 with 2 minutes left and ended up hanging on to win by 2 and knock off Xavier. What did you see from Indiana tonight? How impressed were you with Trace Jackson Davis? Is this a team going in, knocking off Xavier in a building that I think doesn't get enough respect?
Yeah, Center is great.
Hard place to play.
How good it is. But what's your take on Indiana?
The first couple games, the balance was really impressive, and tonight that was not the case. Xavier Johnson and Trace Jackson Davis were awesome. And Malik Renew, I thought was really, really good. And outside of that, boy, it was slim pickings. Miller Kopp, who struggled most of the game, made a big 3 late, made some big free throws. But I think for this team to be really good, they've got to make some threes. And tonight they only shot 12 of them, and they only made 4 of them. So that's definitely a concern. But in fairness, it is their first road game. You go into a tough environment. Not that Xavier is a top 25 team, but has some pieces, is a really well-coached team with Sean Miller. And I think anyone at Xavier, I played there in college. It's a tough place to play. That's a really good win for Indiana. But I do worry that, when the things get tough, is this going to be just Trace Jackson Davis and Xavier Johnson?
Coach?
Yeah, I was impressed with Xavier Johnson to be just his poise. I thought he played like, a veteran player. Trace, man, he's just a hard man. I mean, Jack Nungy, I just watched Jack Nungy the other night against Fairfield. I consider Jack a good defensive big. And Trace made it look easy.
But Coach, don't you think they kind of help they did help Trace Jackson. They're diving through passing lanes. They're letting him get to his left hand.
A little too much.
They're letting him spin baseline. I thought the scouting report on Trace was not followed as well as it could have been.
As it could have been. Here's what makes him tough, though, is that he doesn't have to have the ball deep in the paint.
Right.
So now he can catch it, 15 feet, 17 feet, face up, and he's tremendous on the baseline. Like, I don't know how he navigates down there sometime without stepping out of bounds. And so that makes him difficult. The bigger concern is more, what Robbie just said. They still only made 4 threes, and they got out of there, alive. And that's a big win. That's a hard place to play. It's a good win. Can they get more perimeter? I thought Shafino to be a freshman and have 4 assists to one turnover is impressive. I know he was only 1 for 9 from the floor, but their guard play, I think, is going to dictate, down the stretch.
They're going to play in transition too. I mean, with Xavier Johnson's ability to push the tempo, their personnel is built to run this year. And I think that's going to be something that when their offense does bog down, they can get out and use that length and athleticism.
I want to talk a little bit about Malik Reneau, because 16 points, 6 boards off the bench. He had an assist. I thought he made a couple nice passes. I did not expect him to come in and have this kind of an impact. And I think that eventually he's going to end up taking over for Race Thompson. I just think that it looks like the offense moves better. It looks like the ball moves better. He just seems like a more skilled piece to kind of fit in. And I think it kind of changes, Robbie, what their ceiling can be.
You must not have watched their first couple games then, because he was balling those too.
Who were they playing?
Well, yeah, Bethune-Cookman. I think Morehead State was their first game. This was a different level of competition, but his skill set for his size, he can score with both hands around the basket. He can step out and shoot. He can handle it. He made a couple of plays tonight that you don't expect freshmen to make in their first road game. Even the last play of the game, he's the guy that's coming over and getting a contest on Kunkel's shot at the rim. I just think I agree with you. On nights where Race Thompson's not shooting it great, you very well might see him end a game. He made it was a great design by Mike Woodson, but Xavier went 2-3 zone, and Trace sealed the left side of the zone, and they flashed Reneau right to the elbow, and he made one dribble and just a little lob to Trace Jackson Davis for an easy bucket when they needed it. But it was a big time pass by a freshman on the road. He's a talented kid, and I think he's going to be in position to finish games for Indiana at times this year.
Yeah, LaVall, I said at the beginning of the season, I thought Xavier was going to end up being a top 20 team in college basketball, and a team that could compete for the Big Ten title, or I'm sorry, the Big East title. And I kind of still believe that after seeing them play here, but I'm a little bit worried about the fact that it did not seem like they had any. Their best players are the bigs, right? Jack Nungy and Zach Fremantle. Yeah. And Indiana kind of got whatever they wanted in the paint. I think part of the reason they only took 12 threes was like, why would you take a 3 when Trace Jackson Davis gets a layup anytime he touches the ball, anytime he wants to?
But who outside of UConn has got bigs in the Big East like that?
Kalkbrenner is
okay, but he's not
going to.
Yeah, okay.
And Eric Dixon, I think, might actually be Villanova's best player. We can get to that in a second, but that's a little bit of a red flag to me.
Yeah, I don't worry about, Sean's challenging them defensively. That's where they've got to grow from last season to this season. And they're going to score and Kobe Jones is their best perimeter decision maker at this point. And he's not their point guard, but he's averaging, 6. He has 6 assists tonight, I think. And he's averaging 7 on the year. I think late what you saw was they had no timeouts. They're going to be in games because their bigs will keep them in it, and they got enough. Late, they had no timeouts. And so now you saw Sean, Sule Boom came and he dribbled. He was trying to dribble hand off to Kunkel. He fell down, and they ended up getting a turnover there. And it's like that's a possession where if the coach and the point guard have been together, if you have a point guard, one like a natural point guard, and if the coach and the point guard have been together and have a relationship, that's grown over time, that probably doesn't happen, right? And so they at least get a shot. They were down 1, and then they turned it over and had to foul now with 20-something seconds to go, or whatever. So I think that's their main deal late in the game. Like bigs, I think your bigs can keep you in it. But when under 2 minutes, you got to have some guards that are going to make good decisions and make some plays. 2 minutes, a minute and a half to go. And I think that's their, like, who's that going to be for them?
Robbie Hummel just texted me something. According to ESPN stats and info,
all I was tweeted at me.
Terrence Shannon is the first Big Ten player with at least 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 3-pointers in a game since who? Robbie, do you remember this?
Yes, I do. But we lost, actually, which is what's crazy.
So Hummel did it in 2010 against Ohio State. He texted me that. He said, "You better say this or I'm quitting. I'm leaving the program. I'm leaving the show in the middle."
I had to get my offensive rep back after it was questioned on a defensive program.
All right. So you mentioned Villanova. They went into the Breslin Center and they were down. I think they were down by 18 at one point in the second half and came all the way back. Eric Dickinson had a shot to win on what was a pretty ugly play. LaVall, what do you make of this group? You probably know Villanova better than either of us. What are you concerned about them? Is this just a result of no Justin Moore and no I'm blanking on the name of the freshman with the broken thumb?
Cam Whitmore.
Yeah, Cam Whitmore. Is that just a result of not having two of maybe their three best players? Or I think that there is a bigger issue because I don't know if there's a point guard on this team necessarily. What do you make of Villanova this year and kind of moving forward this season?
Yeah, they had the point guard thing happen during COVID when Colin Gillespie got hurt. Justin Moore had to take over. They're down Justin Moore. Villanova, the difficult thing about them for all the years that I coached against them is they just firepower. I mean, it was coming like my first year in the Big East. It was Mikal Bridges and DiVincenzo and Jalen Brunson and Eric Pascal and Amari Spellman.
What do you do with a team like that?
And it was like we had to score 100. We had to score 101 to beat them. We beat them at our place. They were number one in the country. Mm-hmm. And essentially, it was like, let's score as much as we can because I don't know if we can stop them from scoring. So we beat them 101 to 96, right? But then we go up there and we were doing pretty well. And then DiVincenzo comes off the bench and goes for 30. The next year they struggled. They lost all those guys, and they had Phil Booth, and he was he was playing point guard. Gillespie was still young, but they still kind of found a way. And that's like they found a way to get back in the game tonight. I think this is more like that team versus then when Gillespie and Justin Moore came in and they had a little more firepower. Like when they have firepower because they play through the post and they all post up and they can kick out threes and get you in the closeout. But if they make 8 threes, like they made 8 threes tonight and Eric Dickinson hit 3 of them, that's not traditionally what Villanova is. They've got perimeter players that you got to run off the line and try to stay out of closeouts. And so I think they'll be in games defensively. It'll be like tonight, down the stretch, especially until Justin Moore comes back. Where are we going? For that big possession when we need one down the stretch.
Yep. I'm being told right now that we are going to be able to get Terrence Shannon live on the show before we end, probably within the next 10 minutes or so. So we're going to hang out until then. Robbie, I want to ask you about Michigan State. I had next to no expectation for them this season. I thought that NIT was kind of like a possibility. Maybe I'm an idiot,
wow.
Right?
That's a hateful comment there.
I guess I'm in a different club. I went to their practice, so I got a little bit of advantage because when I went, I was not in that camp. I thought.
Well, I wish you would have told me that before I lost money betting on them against Gonzaga and against Kentucky. So
here's why though. They got guards.
See, that's my thing.
Like
right?
Michigan runs into Arizona State, and Arizona State has 3 quick guards, and they can't keep up. They're trying to catch them all night. Michigan State has guards like Tyson Walker, AJ, and then now that Jaden Akins, but they got enough guard play. And
so I didn't expect their guards to be like I didn't expect Tyson Walker to be as good as he's been this season. What he had like 16 and 6 tonight. AJ Hogarth damn near had a triple double. 22, yeah.
Tyson Walker at 22 and 5.
When I was at practice, AJ came up. AJ told me, he's like, Coach, they're not going to be able to go under on me this year. And he was 3 for 6 tonight from 3. Like he made a point. to come up and say, hey, like, because he's got great pace and a body and he can pass, but he came up to me, he's like, Coach, they're not going under on me this year, I promise you.
I do remember a play tonight where they were going under on him at like the foul line. So he did make him pay though. If you go 3 for 6, that's enough.
LaVall, Scoop gave him the best nickname. His name is AJ Hogard. He calls him AJ Goes Hard. That's pretty good.
That is good.
I think him being Coach Izzo trusting him a lot more allows Tyson Walker to be off the ball and go score like he did tonight. Because last year, Tyson was the point. They came in and beat us at Butler, but Tyson was the point guard. AJ was the backup point guard.
They alternated, yeah, right, Coach?
Yeah, they were, and now I think their best version of themselves is AJ running the point and Tyson getting loose and going to get buckets and score the basketball.
Mm-hmm. And he made big shots against Kentucky. I mean, he made big shots tonight. All of a sudden, this game kind of went from a little bit of a slog to the last 4 minutes. It was just like big time shot. Both teams trading, making big time plays. I worried a little bit about Joey Hauser and Malik Hall just being more consistent. And so far they've been that. And we talked about the guards. They've been really good. This is the game where Mady Sissoko came back down to earth from what he's been playing at. He had 1 point, he only took 2 shots, had 3 rebounds. They went small a lot.
If one of those guards gets in foul trouble, the other one can go to point guard.
Right.
Like
you can move that over.
I had the Xavier game the other night. Kobe Jones wasn't playing because he had an ankle injury. And Fairfield's up at halftime because what are we doing when Kobe Jones is out? Like if AJ Hoggart goes down for some reason, you still have Tyson Walker. Illinois, like if Sky Clark goes down, you still have Jaden Epps. You still have another. So I think sometimes that's a big thing that people don't talk about in terms of your versatility and your depth.
The thing I really like about them is we mentioned the versatility in lineups that Illinois can provide, right? If you want to go big, you can play those lineups with Mady Sissoko with the 5. If you want to go small, I think we've seen enough from Malik Hall and Joey Hauser to believe that they can hold their own against pretty much anybody.
I think that's personnel based. They're not doing that shit against Purdue. They're not doing that shit against Michigan.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. But
Purdue's in a different category though.
No, I agree.
Robbie, what I'm saying is
they'll see them twice. I mean, they'll play them 2 times. And
what I'm saying is it allows you to match up with some of these other teams without having a drop off in talent. You know what I'm saying? Like you can still have. Totally. My biggest concern is teams where you don't have your 5 best players on the floor at all times, or your best offensive lineup and your best defensive lineup is like 4 different players, right? I think with Michigan State, there really is no best 5, at least from what I can see so far. Is that fair to say? They have like 7 guys that can all kind of mix and match and put together really good lineups.
No, I would say their best lineup is Walker, Hogard, Hall, Hauser, Sissoko.
The Jaden Aiken slander on here is just too much.
Hopefully he's good tonight. He didn't play well in the other games.
What do you think their ceiling is? Can they compete for a Big Ten title?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. No question.
Why do you say that so quickly?
Guard play. You got an Izzo-led defense and you have trustworthy guards. And that combination. Like, I know where the ball's going to be when the money's on the line with Michigan State. Don't you? Like when we need one, it's going to be AJ Hoggart in the pick and roll, or we're probably going to Tyson Walker. If Joey Hauser's got it going that night, we can pick and pop, or he can post a switch on a matchup. Like what you're going to late in a game. And Izzo, they did it the other night. I mean, you're going downhill full speed. Great decision, and Malik Hall gets a dunk. So I think the Izzo-led defense plus and the combination of that and guard play, they're right there for the Big Ten title. I'm not saying they win it, but they're competing for it. They're right there.
Yeah, it's amazing. The top of the Big Ten, I came in this season thinking that there weren't going to be all that many good teams in the league, right? I was thinking this was going to be the year where the Big Ten kind of came back to earth. But now we're seeing Iowa look great, Robbie. We're seeing Michigan State play really, really well. We know Illinois just beat up on UCLA. Indiana went on the road and beat Xavier and has looked really good so far this season. It feels like it's going to be another year where we're just like, the Big Ten's loaded again. Everybody at the top's really good.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think that this is going to be a season where right now I would say there's five or six teams that could win the league. And I really think that. I think Iowa is right there. I think Purdue you have to talk about, Michigan State, Illinois, Indiana. The league has performed, I would say, above expectations so far in the non-conference. I think it's had a really good non-conference stretch here, and there's still a lot to be decided in that as these Thanksgiving events kind of move forward and we get through Christmas. But I would say it's been about as good of a start for the league as it could have been.
Where do you see Iowa kind of stacking up in here? Goodman is
I think they're a top 4
record
team in the league. I think that they are the versatility thing we've talked about all night. They can mix and match the way they play. They've got really good guard play with Tony Perkins, Aaron Eulis, and you can throw Connor McCaffrey if you really want to and to bring the ball up. He's also shooting it better. I like Patrick McCaffrey. I haven't even talked about their best player, Chris Murray. He was dominant the other night at Seton Hall. I think Rebraca has come a long way and is playing with a different confidence and swagger this season. And I like the way they play. They play fast. They'll turn you over. They don't turn it over. They'll have to rebound. They will have to rebound. That's going to be the one thing this year where if they don't do that, from losing Keegan Murray, they're going to be smaller a lot of nights. But I like their talent. They just have a lot of good players when you look at their roster.
It's incredible to me that you can lose Luka Garza and not fall off at all, and then you lose Keegan Murray, and it doesn't look like they've fallen off at all. Like how
and Bohannon? And
Bohannon,
he was a big part of what they've done.
This Rob, like when with Fran, because he runs motion, like Paint doesn't run it as much, Robbie, as when you guys were there and played there. It can kind of get anybody. If your big's your best player, or if you got Joe Wieskamp or Jordan Bohannon or whoever it might be, because the offense is flowing and everybody's moving and everybody's touching the ball and guys know who the best player is. It's different than running sets and the other team being able to sit on all your sets and blow them up, and now you got to go somewhere else. I think that just the style of play in the offense. That helps because you look at Chris Murray, like I know everybody was saying he could start and be what he's jumping, but I didn't. I mean, we knew Keegan, but it's like, man, and I know Kenyon well. Kenyon's my guy. He grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan. I'm from Albion, Michigan. It's like 30 minutes away. I watched Kenyon, their dad, play when I was in middle school and they were in high school. So I'm like, I saw the boys when they were this big. And I'm thinking he got 2 of them and they're both pros.
When did you realize they were going to be this? Like, did you, when they were 14, 15, 16, did you have any idea what they could?
So I was at Iowa 2007 to 2010. So I don't know how old that makes the boys, and they're coming to camp and stuff, right? But I don't know that you would have projected this at that point in time, probably after I left.
So I teased this a little bit earlier, but we do have a special guest joining us from, I don't even know what arena. Where did Illinois and UCLA play? Was that the T-Mobile Arena? Hopefully we're going to be joined by Terrence Shannon here in just a second. The unfortunate part is that Jeff Goodman is going to be here as well, and he's live. I don't think he knows that he's live on the air right now. You're live, Goodman. You're live. Hold the camera up. You're live. Goodman, you're live.
Good start here.
This is
all right, Rob.
Hey, there we go. All
hopefully
right,
you can hear us. I don't know if you can or not, but hopefully you can. I'm with Terrence Shannon here, star of the night. Boy, I'll tell you, I didn't expect that. All right, I expected you to have a good game. I did not expect 8 for 9 from 3. Was that just something that you've been waiting for? Because it felt like you had the clamps kind of left off you tonight, and it's your team, and you have that offensive freedom.
I mean, my teammates, they just tell me to be aggressive, and Sincere, he got us he sparked the game on defense, and that kind of got me going. And once we got to like a media timeout, Matt told me, like, TJ, man, we need you to be aggressive. And I just answered. I tried to do the best to make my team. I was just making the right play. If I ain't got it, I'm pass it and give it up. Like, I'm not selfish. So just making the right play and
What did it feel like? Because you've been waiting for this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it. I mean, you've coached, you played under Beard, under Mark Adams at Texas Tech. Now Brad Underwood has kind of given you the ball and said it's your team.
Yes, sir. It's great. I know it's like if it's felt like my work was paying off. Didn't go home this summer. I stayed in the gym, stayed at school, put in the work, and it just paid off.
What does this win mean? Because frankly, I picked UCLA to win the whole thing this year.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. We had a lot of doubters. My friend actually.
No, I wasn't doubting you guys.
No,
I was more saying like those dudes are good.
No, I get it. My friend actually sent me like a screenshot on ESPN. It only had us a 30% chance to win, and I'm like, it just gave me a little more edge, and I just went into the game with that and brought the team together. Told us we got to beat these guys, and we pulled it out from 15 down.
So you've now played for your fan bases that you've played for are insane. Two of probably the craziest in the country that people don't really know about. You know, they know about Kentucky, Kansas, Texas Tech, and Illinois. I mean, you saw it tonight. It was insane.
Those are I think Texas Tech and Illinois are the top two fan bases in college basketball. They're great. They when I came out today, like it and heard them screaming, and I'm like, man, this about to be a home game. And actually, when we were watching the Virginia game, they're like, man, there's so many Illinois fans out there. So I'm like, y'all sure it's not Virginia
They were
fans?
drinking and waiting.
Yeah, I'm like, y'all sure it's not Virginia fans? And then, but they're like, no, that's Illinois. I'm like, okay. I love the way they like support us, and we got to get the win. Coleman said we got to get the win from. Look how they travel for us, and we did.
You said, I mean, all you've been preparing for is shooting NBA threes, and you did it tonight. I mean, those were some long, deep threes. How much will you rely on that throughout the season, or will it be something that, because again, your game before this was more predicated on going to the basket?
I don't rely to the three. I don't rely on the three at all. Again, if you see in the game, like I was trying to do my best to get downhill, pushing in fast break and transition, and I just get what the defense. I just take what the defense gives me. They were sagging off. They were afraid for me to drive, and if I had the lane, I'd take it. If they clamped in, I'd kick out to Sky or Matt or anyone. But it's just I was just feeling the game. I caught a rhythm, and I was feeling it.
You were definitely feeling it. Thanks for joining us after dark. Next time you got to wear the Daddy Brad shirt. All right, we got to get you in the Daddy Brad shirt. But congrats. We'll see you Sunday against Virginia, one of the best defensive teams over probably the last decade. So get some rest.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You got it. There he is, Rob. Terrence Shannon.
Yeah, we're good night.
This is the Daddy Brad shirt that Goodman was referring to right there. It's in the field of 68.shop. Jump in there in the merch store and go pick it out. Gentlemen, it is currently 12:37 Eastern time, the only legitimate time zone for the record. And I know that Robbie's got a tea time tomorrow. So now that we've had Terrence Shannon live, I think it's time for us to call this a show. This has been fun. It was a great day of college basketball, a lot of great basketball games. Thank you for tuning in with us. Thank you to Robbie Hummel. Thank you to LaVall Jordan. No thanks to Jeff Goodman, Dagan Hughes,